Hi, Julie. Welcome to the Buy, Grow, Sell podcast.
Oh, thanks for having me, Simon.
My pleasure indeed. You're dialing all the way in from Toronto, so you're obviously on a bit of a late call here, so I appreciate you making that effort.
Pleasure.
Yeah, Julie, I know we're going to get to talking about your business, Mabel's Labels, which I know you built up and ultimately exited from. Maybe we could start with a little bit of your background and kind of what led to maybe that's you starting that business.
Yeah, for sure. So, Simon, it's interesting. I never thought I'd be a, professional label maker, but, life takes its turns. I first did my undergraduate degree and then I went to grad school and then I ended up going to law school. And in fact, I was an Australian because Daddy-O is an Australian and we met at NYU when I was doing my master's and he was doing his MBA. So then we landed in Perth. He had a job there and I was studying. And then we were in Melbourne for about 3 years and I had 3 kids there. And then we came back to Canada. And, it's funny, I thought I would be doing sort of legal aid family law for the rest of my life. But as it turned out, my eldest child at the time had just turned 3. And I always say when you start a business, you need to know your why. And I had a couple of whys. One was that there was a product missing from the marketplace. And the second was that my kid, Mac, who was 3 at the time, was diagnosed with autism. And I really didn't think the traditional workforce was going to suit me any longer. So I wanted to kind of exit that. I didn't think law would be the place. I wanted to be able to advocate for him and set up a program and a therapy session. And he already had 2 younger siblings, so it was already getting busy around here. So that's when I went to my co-founders and said, hey, we've been talking about this idea. Now I have a reason that, it's just not going to suit any longer. What do you guys think? So we started, and that's over 20 years ago now. Can I ask
a question? Just there, your co-founders you mentioned. So how many co-founders were there?
So there are 4 of us, and actually we're all related. So there's funny things about that too when you exit a company, right? So there are 4 of us. We went to uni all together, and one is actually my sister. One was a friend of mine who met my brother through me and my sister and married him. So she's now our sister-in-law. And one actually is a friend of ours we have a young uncle and she married him. So she became our aunt, even though she's younger than me. So that's how it all happened. And so Not only were we 4 co-founders, we were 4 relatives.
Yeah, interesting. And so it sounds like you'd been talking about this business idea for a while before you kind of found that trigger or a bit of motivation to do it. So how long had the idea been brewing?
It had probably been brewing for a couple of years. I mean, we were all sort of young moms and we were tired of losing things and there wasn't really something available. And so we thought there's got to be something out there. And there really wasn't. We were in North America and there was nothing that. So, as good entrepreneurial mamas are, we went and started doing our research and our development and we created this product that has become a very, very loved brand for parents everywhere because we're web-based literally everywhere.
Yeah, nice. Well, as a parent, I can relate to the idea of kids losing stuff. And my 2 boys are in high school now, and the school just has this policy: if you come to school without stuff or you've lost stuff, you go and have to buy another one. And so the parents are all like, don't lose your stuff.
No, up in arms. Well, that's why we said it's kind of a cheap insurance policy. If the stuff ends up in lost and found, it will come back to you. So, but it was tough in those early days, right? Like, so it was, a lot of the co-founders were either on a mat leave or working. Kids were in daycare and juggling a lot. And, we were making labels in my sister's basement from 9 p.m. after kids went to bed at 8 or whatever until 2 a.m. and then getting up at 6 a.m. with kids and doing it all again. I always say that people have a tendency to really romanticize entrepreneurship and they think, oh, it's going to be all like TED Talks and book deals and speaking engagements. And really it looks a lot like making labels in a basement until 2 a.m., right? Like there's no like putting the kids to bed and pouring a glass of wine and watching Netflix. It was not that at all, So, and I have 6 kids, so it just was constant mayhem. Yeah.
It's funny you say that. I got a friend of mine, she at an awards dinner for business owners and entrepreneurs, and she got up there and said, shout out to all of you in the room. I might be getting this award, but you're a crazy bunch of bloody people. You're the only kind of people in the world I know that quits a 40-hour-a-week job for an 80-hour-a-week job for half the pay. So, well done to you.
And, people say, oh, it would be so great, not to have a boss. I'm like, I feel like I just have more bosses. I have my co-founders, I had, customers, I had suppliers, I had employees. I'm like, the sound of one boss sounds pretty darn good right now.
Yeah, for sure. So tell me, you said you're creating the label. So I guess I had a couple of questions in my head here. Was, first of all, did you all, when you decided to start the company, did you all have to put in a little bit of money to start with? Was there any kind of discussion and agreement about that type of thing?
Right. So interestingly, and this is very typical of women entrepreneurs, we're not, especially mom entrepreneurs, we're not, it's not common to go to banks and look for, angel investors. And we tend to, go for love money. Do our parents have anything they want to invest? Do we have friends? Or we just really went deep in our pockets, found, some buttons and pocket lint and a few coins and pieced it together. So the startup costs were not ridiculous. We were able, between four of us, that's the other advantage of having co-founders, is that, you're spreading out the risk a bit. So it wasn't just me investing; those guys were investing too. But then, to the point of this to this podcast, eventually, when you do sell, you have to split that too. Sure. You only get 25%. But so I mean, I think one of the advantages of having co-founders in those early days, for sure, was being able to spread out the risk and share the costs.
And
share the workload. Well, and share the workload, we could divide and conquer. Like, I didn't have to do all the things. As you know, like, solo entrepreneurship can be very lonely, and we had each other. And if one of us had just had a baby, or one of us had something going on at their other job, the others could step in. And, we didn't have that lonely experience of entrepreneurship, which 20 years ago was particularly lonely because there weren't podcasts. There was no social media. There was nothing. You literally had to go to those annoying wine and cheese networking groups and stuff, right? Remember those?
Oh yeah. So the other day I had a client come to me and wanted to exit their business and sell. And as I started to sort of scratch the surface a little bit, realized there was two partners. They were 50-50 in terms of the shareholding. But the chap I was talking to was basically the one working full-time in the business. And he felt there was a sense of, it was unequal. It was uneven. I'm doing all this work. I'm building value for you. But and so did you ever, I guess the one concerning thing about, and I've had a lot of guests on this podcast, they go into business with friends or family or whatever it might be. And it all sounds lovely until you have to have a difficult conversation. And without putting you on the spot though, but was there ever any of those kind of moments where you go, oh my God, I have to have a difficult conversation and these are family members as well?
Sure. I mean, we from the start had to really manage that because, we also have a family cottage together and, you have to be like, okay, the boardroom, one conversation happens, but you walk out, you have to be like, okay, are you bringing the potatoes Thanksgiving or who's taking the kids to, that cousin birthday party? You have to be able to do that. And you really have to be able to separate that. And that's easier for some people and harder for other people. So I think really understanding each other's communication styles and realizing that, some people I deliver information and information delivered to me very succinctly. I don't get offended, just abrupt. Where some people, they need to hear a few good things about them first, and then they need to get the feedback. So you need to really understand how each other communicates, and understanding your communication styles will help. And you're going to screw it up, and then you know what? You're just practicing. But Simon, honestly, the best thing you can do is just get that shareholders agreement in place while you're all still friends. Take care of that. Don't be having that conversation of, I've been putting in more work. I'm put upon. You've been a silent partner. I've been all that gets baked into that separation agreement. Because if you think marital divorce is tough, you should try business partner divorce. Yuck.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah. And look, any kind of divorce can be ugly, but it's just, You're right. I've seen the best and worst of it in terms of the approaches, and it's
Right.
yeah, you're right. It's much easier to have a conversation up front when you're still friends, and you can sort of discuss things in theory about, well, what if something happened, rather
You
than
know what?
oh
It's
shit.
always exactly like to hypotheticals, but also it's really great if you can get somebody to help facilitate that conversation
Yeah,
or to draw that stuff up, because sometimes you just need that outside voice. And honestly, Simon, like we came from, another advantage of having the four of us is we had four different skill sets, four different educations. So we brought a bunch of different skills to the table. Business was not one of them, not an MBA between us. So, being able to get your right people around the table who are advisors, like get yourself an awesome accountant, an awesome lawyer, fill your gaps. Don't hire people who are like you or just going to feed your ego. Get people on the bus who are going to fill gaps that you don't have. And that's particularly around communication. And, when we started hitting a few bumps and hurdles along the way, we ended up getting a business coach for the team, like the four of us, and he came and facilitated every meeting, and just was able to provide some background. He had coached bazillions of businesses, so I mean, we had only had the one, so being able to get that kind of perspective was very helpful as well.
yeah, that's awesome. And talk to me a little bit of okay, you started out, you're in the basement, you're making labels. What did growth start to look like? The first couple of years, and you no doubt, obviously, you saw a lot of progress. But what were those early kind of growth years like?
Look, it's always scary. I remember just thinking, like, whenever I would drive by a shop that had closed down, I had this whole new empathy around, oh my, I know how much you put in that now your shop is closed. And you put so much sweat equity and financial equity and emotional, like all of it, that it is really, it is really scary. But again, to the advantage of having partners, when I'd be like, oh my God, guys, we're never going to do it. It's never going to happen. They'd be like, we got this. And when one of them was having a mental breakdown about it, we'd be like, oh no, we totally got this. So we're able to rally the team. We did have some early indicators that things were going to look good. Look, the product was very well received. Yeah. Moms, our market, very word of mouth. They were talking about this at the daycare drop off, the school soccer games, at all the things. And then once social media hit, like boom. The moms own it, right? The moms all were mom bloggers and Facebook pages and this, and it was such a vehicle for word of mom for us. So we were very early adopters, and that's why we have over 200,000 Facebook fans and 1,000, Insta followers and all that jazz, because we've built a community. I've been blogging for 15 years, not about labels, but about raising 6 kids and running a business and giving my tips and tricks of a mom of 6 and doing all that jazz. Because moms also want to buy from companies that they relate to.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
knowing your market, right, Simon? You got to know your market.
Well,
and we were our market.
You were your market, exactly. I was actually going to say it must have been good to be able to shortcut the product market researching phase, but really with 6 kids, that was not a shortcut at all. It was.
I know, it was a long cut.
But that's great. No, I get it. I think it's anyone who's had kids and has been around daycare centers and mothers groups and all that sort of stuff, you kind of see how it actually works. And
for sure. So we did have. We were in that basement, and it was pretty dodgy. I got to tell you, I remember once we had a couple employees, I was like, I'm sure we're breaking labor laws here. So rather than getting a commercial space at that time, we told my sister to buy a bigger house with a bigger basement, and she did. So that's where we went, and we thought we'd be there 5 years, and no, we only lasted 2. So now we're in, a 20,000 square foot facility with 60 full-time staff. And, that swells. Our back to school season is pretty, remarkable. So right now, we're making labels 24/7 kind of thing. Yeah, so it's, it's been a bit of fun.
Yeah, that's cool. And did you, as a family, as co-founders, was there a conversation? Obviously, there was a conversation at some point, but was there a conversation early in the piece around exiting the business, or was it just, hey, we've got a great idea, let's see where it goes?
Right. Okay. I think that is a really good question, because we didn't really have that conversation. When you're busy with a startup and raising kids, you're just kind of like, bootstrapping, feet on the street, just trying to get these labels out the friggin' door, right? So, But I would say though, the advice I always give people is that, and I don't mean to sound like a Debbie Downer, but you do need to understand what your exit plan is, because if you're going to run it like a legacy business and pass it along to your children, you're going to manage it differently than if you're going to, get an acquisition and exit that way. So they can look very, very different. So you do want to be thinking about those things. And the other thing too is that sometimes failures for winners. Like if you do your business plan and things aren't trotting along, like if it was still 2 a.m. and it's 20 years later and I was still making labels in a basement, that's a huge failure. Like if you're that far in, you need to be just going back. I always say business plans shouldn't be gathering dust. You should be blowing them off and like checking and making changes. Because sometimes there is a right time to exit and be like, you know what, I got to cut my losses and move on to the next thing. So, like I said, quitting can be for winners. So we didn't really think about it. And we just were very much, I think, getting by. But that would be the advice, is like, have some sort of idea about what you want your exit to be, because then you will manage your business better.
Yeah. And I think too, that certainly in my experience anyway, is that, no plans really go to plan, right? Or certainly no plans survive the first day of battle even. And so I've just seen so many business owners who had an idea of what their business was going to be and how their exit would look like. And certainly I think this idea of handing it down to the next generation and bringing the kids into the business, I see a lot of founders who romanticize that idea. And of course, we're now in a time where we're more educated and more wealthy as a society than ever. And the kids go to better schools and they get to have more opportunities. And a lot of kids don't want to do what you do as a parent.
Right. And I don't even know if I want to put that pressure on them, right? Like it's like for them to like be like, oh, well, I'm just going to do Mabel's labels. Like, I don't even know if I want that being an option. I actually have some very smart entrepreneurial friends in Australia. My uncle Tony Costa, who the fruit and veg people out Geelong way. Yeah. And, we've seen, it was very remarkable watching Tony and he started with his 4 brothers. One obviously died in a car accident years and years ago. And then the next generation and the next generation. And you see, the struggles. I mean, they were very good about all their kids swept that shop floor. All of them had to get educated and work elsewhere before coming back. They put things in place, but you see these things because with family businesses, I mean, I think traditionally they say first generation starts as second generation builds it, third generation kills it. Is that what they say, Simon? I think that's
It's funny how often that happens.
Yeah. And well, that's because also, I mean, you got to think generationally. If you start a business, then your kids actually have experienced some privilege.
Yeah, totally.
If your business has succeeded, you can see this. So you have to make sure that you're instilling that work ethic and that you're not giving them too much. And I find this with entrepreneurs, you really need to manage your children. If you want them to be good workers and instill that, then stop giving them stuff. Stop it.
Make them feel
Stop
hardship.
making it easy. Exactly. Yeah. Make them sweep those floors.
Yeah, 100%.
No. Yeah.
It's funny, I had the same discussion with a good friend of mine who's very successful in business and he's still grinding. And I'm like, what? So why do you work so hard? Like I was getting to the point of he's proving something to himself almost. I'm like, mate, when is enough? Oh, well, I'm going to do this and I'm going to set it off for my daughters. I'm like, mate, don't rob your daughters. Make them work. Yeah, don't rob your daughters of an opportunity to face hardships and have to solve problems themselves. Like I
tell my kids all the time, failure is a gift. The lessons you get from failure. So you know what? It's okay. It's really okay. Yeah. But that's a whole parenting segment in entrepreneurship I can talk about. That's a whole other podcast.
Totally.
But you know what? Speaking of privilege, I do want to hit this quickly, only because you mentioned like serial entrepreneurs and things like that. And I think, people are always like, oh, Julie, you're so brave. You left a lucrative career to do this. And I really don't think so, because at the end of the day, I could leave my career because Daddy-O made enough money for me to be able to do that. And us also pay for therapy for my son. I mean, I see like single moms out there who are working 2 jobs and also trying to do a side hustle. I'm like, They are the heroes here. And, so then I sell my company. So guess what I have then? A lot of money. And guess what I can do then? Start another business.
Totally.
The stakes are not as high for me. Wealth begets wealth. So I always just like to remind people like, hey, before you make me a hero out of this, it was coming from a place of privilege. So I'd like to acknowledge that, Simon.
Yeah. Oh, look, hey, and there's no denying you took what might have been an advantage and did something with it, and that's to be recognised and applauded. But hey, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think to be frank, I think even just being born in this country in Australia, or you're 100%. In Canada at the moment, like you've already won the lottery, right? Like you have opportunity far more beyond most of the world. And then
you add things like, my parents were really good parents and they supported me. So of course, and I had two of them, and they were both educators and valued education. So sent me off, and then I had good self-esteem. So I wasn't with a dude who was a loser. Like there's so many things, right?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
But again, we digress.
Yeah. Well, look, but I think it's great to be able to acknowledge where you've had a leg up and where things have worked for you, and having gratitude for the things that maybe you didn't have to fight for and struggle for and whatever else. And, I'm ever cognizant of the fact that throughout my life, I've always ended up with some kind of mentor in my life, not because I sought them out, but because they decided to help me. And I look back and I always think, and actually one of those gentlemen who's now passed, he was like a father to me. And I said to him, I don't think I've ever sat down and said thank you to you for just everything you do. I mean, you say thank you for things in the moment, but like, wow, thank you for everything you've done for my life. Like, and he's like, don't thank me. God, go and do it for someone else. That's the point. Like,
right. Love it.
It's not about paying back or saying thank you. So, yeah, I think that's important. And that's why we're on this podcast, right? Is we want to share.
And I'm like, look what you're doing. You're doing exactly what he wanted you to do, sharing the voice of entrepreneurs to help other entrepreneurs. Love it.
100%. So, all right, let me change gear a little bit here, because you've started this business. You've come from this really cool kind of headspace of knowing your market and knowing what your clients wanted. You've built a business. What did it look like from when you started? Obviously, you sold. How long was that period?
So we were in business 14 years.
Yep, cool.
About 14 years. So you know what? Yeah, it had. And it's funny, because to your point earlier, you said, were you planning to sell? What were you going to do? And for us, we actually weren't even planning to sell in that moment, but we got a call out of the blue from Avery, which is owned by CCL. And, Avery, big label company, but didn't do what we did. And they just said, hey, can we go for dinner? And we were like, hey, can't hurt. So we sit down and have a conversation with them. Okay, let's keep the conversation going. That was July. And quite frankly, Simon, it was quite serendipitous. Like because at that moment too, the four of us were kind of running as co-CEOs, and it was getting a bit sticky, and we were kind of like that four-headed horse. And some people wanted the company to go in this direction, some the other direction. And I know I felt that I think we need one CEO, and I think it has to be an external hire. And then, some of them are like, well, maybe I could be the CEO. And, that's awkward. So, there were lots of things going on. And then we thought, oh, well, maybe it's time to get investment if we really want to take it to the next level. So when we started having the conversations with Avery, we kind of were warming up to the idea and being like, look, we needed to do a shift. Maybe this is it. And my sister was like, we've been doing this for 14 years. Isn't this the dream? Build it, scale it, sell it. Like, come on, we got other things we could be doing too. So, these conversations, in the end, we got there for a couple of reasons. One was that they were not going to change our brand. We're still in the same facility. We're still Mabel's Labels. Our people still work there. Like it was the same. They know better than to acquire a company like ours and then make it Avery, because what we had was this very strong brand.
Yeah.
So that stayed the same. So that was one thing we liked. We also liked that CCL, who's the parent company of Avery, who owns us in the end, is actually a Canadian company. But also, to a point I made earlier, with four of us, the price tag had to be right, because we only got, a quarter of the piece of the pie. So what were we all, us deciding on what we we're comfortable with. But as when we get to the price, we did our EBITDA times whatever. But here's the thing, Simon, because we weren't planning on selling, our EBITDA wasn't great that year because we had spent $100,000 on a website. We had bought some new equipment. We were doing a building year that so we would benefit 2 years later from the investments we were making now. So when they originally threw a number at us, we're like, whoa, hold on. Our EBITDA isn't strong. If we were planning to sell, we would not have done what we're doing. And they understood that and respected it and gave us the number that we needed to get to. So we got to yes. But I would advise anybody else, if they are planning on listing or marketing to sell, they want to make sure that EBITDA is very strong, because that's how you determine basically how much the company's worth. I'm sure you've spoken about this many times.
Yeah. Can I ask probably more of a personal question, I guess, but did you go through much of a process to work out what number was important to you? I think we figured out what the company would be worth. And then we could only take this because yes, it gets divided by, it sold for 12 million. Yep.
Because we were like, we got to walk away for we need 3 million each to walk away. Because you know what, at the end of the day, this sounds gross, but it's not a lot of money, when you have put that much time. And of course, for a long time, we weren't paying ourselves very well. And, everything we earned, we were putting back in the company and yada, 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 6 kids. Yeah. So that was kind of our number that we could all walk away with that and feel comfortable.
Yeah, no, that's great. And obviously you're having 4 people, family can be a strength. It could be a negative in these scenarios, but to have 4 of you sit down and have to agree on a number, it's just more complexity, right? So I think clearly you've come out the other side. You've done well.
But again, I think, Simon, a big part of that was sitting down with our our friend mentors, our friendtors who are our lawyer and our accountant, and them to be like, girls, this is what you really are worth. This is what I think you can push for. And the other thing I would highly advise, and you've probably mentioned this before, is that we got an outside lawyer who specializes in these negotiations to do this for us. And it was worth every cent, because not only did it give us get us more money and negotiated properly. The other thing business owners need to consider is that often there's a condition for you to stay on, right? I had to stay on for a year. Yep. You don't want to get in a pissing match with the person who's going to be your boss for that year or 3 years or whatever you sign on for, right? So you want to everybody stay friends and friendly. So have somebody else being the go-between bad guy, good cop, bad cop, right?
Yeah. Great advice. Absolutely great advice. It's preserving relationships, right?
100%.
Don't fire off missiles you don't need to shoot. It's such a critical thing. And I know, Julie, you're still there, right? So when did the transaction? Right. When did the transaction happen?
So it did happen 6 years ago. And me staying on I know it's very unusual. So immediately 2 exited, and then 1 stayed on as the GM. One of my partners stayed on as the GM for maybe 3 years, and then decided that she wanted to do other things. A few lessons I will say around that. For me, it's been no problem. I was not involved so much operationally. I was always the company spokesperson. I was writing, I do PR, I do a lot of media, I do all that stuff. So I was kind of out, just kind of being the voice and face of Mabel. Obviously I was still making big management decisions and that sort of thing, but it's not like I was making labels or supervising people who are making labels. So I think the people who were more involved operationally had a harder time, because suddenly, now we have a GM who's our partner and she doesn't need us at all the meetings, and a lot of people have a hard time. There's ego with this stuff too, right? And that's, so I think, that can be tricky. There's I see this with other entrepreneurs too. And I did feel like I saw it with one of my business partners, and she actually has talked about this, about how she kind of defined herself by being a Mabel's Labels co-founder. Like it was her identity. So when we sold, she didn't really know how she identified. Meanwhile, she had 3 kids. She had lots of other talents. She has lots going on, but she really had like an identity crisis. So I do advise entrepreneurs to remember you're entrepreneurs, but you're other things too. And don't lose sight of that so that you don't have this kind of crisis when you exit your business. You're more than that.
Yeah, 100%. It's your business is still an asset at the end of the day. It's not you, right? And
right. And you know what? We've done great without them. You know, like that's the thing. And you want your business, as a business owner, I want to be able to get hit by a bus tomorrow and know that my business is not going to be impacted, you know, and that and that's the key to running a good business. So you should be delighted when you can walk away from your business and it succeeds. But you do want to put things in place to make sure it's successful because you still care.
Of course. Yeah. You still need to have some
still
level
your baby.
Yeah, 100%. So, how long did it take to get the deal done? From when Avery first reached out to you to, hey, deal's closed, you've been paid.
You're going to be shocked. You're going to be shocked.
Okay,
you have to let me know. So we had that dinner in July. We closed end of December, same year.
Okay, no,
it's pretty fast.
Yeah, that is pretty fast. Look,
yeah,
I've seen some crazy stuff, or heard crazy stuff too. You know, like I had a chap on here recently who sold his company to BlackBerry for $150 million over a cup of coffee. It just went bang, bang, bang. And literally, it was weeks. And they're like, how the hell do you do a deal like that so quick? So, but I actually don't think that's real. And so that's so out of the norm that
it's out of the norm.
Yeah, and I have to say it on the show is don't have that expectation because you know, deal fatigue is a real thing and people do get frustrated and upset and I've seen deals implode because people have little mini breakdowns in the middle of them. So,
oh my God.
When you
so
say
much, Simon, so much. Yes, it's fast. And this is the thing too, business owners are left at the altar constantly. Do not tell anyone what's going down. Because often, I did not say anything until that money was in my account on New Year's Eve. Say nothing. There's that, that being left at the altar is a real thing. And you need to, and the other thing for us, which was really hard, was because CCL is a publicly traded company, we couldn't say anything anyways, because it would be insider trading. What felt ugly for us, Simon, was we are really tight and transparent with our staff. We are big corporate culture people. And, when they came in to do due diligence, we pretended we were having a tax audit. It felt so gross. I had to come home and shower every night. I hated lying to them. It's just not how we did things. So that was tough. But on the day that we told them and it was hitting, the news and everything, we had a mandatory meeting, which obviously they're all like, what the heck? Because we never do things like that. It feels so patriarchal, mandatory meetings. We never, do that. So we had this mandatory meeting, which was just not part of our culture. And we actually got a coach to come in and teach the 4 of us how to deliver the message, because your staff team would be like your kids. When you tell them you're getting divorced, your kids are like, where am I going to live? You got 30 seconds. Where am I going to live? Do I have to switch schools? What's it going to look like? Your staff's the same. How does it affect me? Do I still have my job? So we delivered the message in such a professional, scripted way. And I would also advise getting coaching around that. In both those scenarios, just so that you can get that message clear and out. And we said 2 things to them. We gave them all coffee shop gift cards and said, whatever we are doing, the 4 partners, if you're having a moment, you got your gift card, we will go for a coffee with you. If we don't know the answer to one of your questions, we will find out as soon as possible. And that in times of scariness and change, we don't turn on each other, we turn to each other.
Yep.
And with that, it went very smoothly. Our staff team, I was really afraid. And somebody stood up and said, way to go, girls, you did this. And they all stood up and clapped. And we're just
No, congratulations, Julie. Honestly, I've almost feel like a broken record saying this to clients on this show, to my kids. It's not what you do, it's how you do it. It's okay to have difficult conversations if you do it in the right way. And I'm constantly talking to both, by the way, buyers and sellers when we're facilitating a deal to say, how you manage the message from here is going to be critical. It will determine whether this deal is actually a success for you or not. Us getting a deal here and signing the paper and you paying money, that's actually only half the deal, right? The rest of it is ensuring that the rest of it happens well. And I keep saying, people, we're all on a bell curve, right, in terms of how we respond. When a deal goes down, at one extreme, people will literally think the sky's falling on their heads. We're all going to get fired. This is the worst possible thing in the world. And at the other end, there's always going to be like one or two little souls who go, ooh, change equals opportunity. This is exciting, newer, bigger operation. And then most of us are in the middle kind of going, I really don't know what's going to happen. So I'll kind of zip my button and just, zip it up and wait and see, But
for sure,
I love what you've done here. And and here's the takeaway for everyone listening. Get some coaching around this stuff, right? Like
100%.
Unless you feel like you're an expert in mergers and acquisitions and integrations, get some coaching on how to manage that stuff, because it will pay dividends to you. And two, just understand that, hey, that bell curve thing, right? People are going to react differently and in unexpected ways.
And so get coaching around that as well. And then the other thing I got coaching in was we hired some PR help, because I thought, what if they're all like, oh, look at the 4 moms, they're sellouts, or, oh, now they've been acquired. And so I got some speaking points around that. I was ready for press. I was ready for, like, on Facebook, I was ready for all of it. And you know what? I never had to use it, but I felt equipped and I felt ready to deal with any of the naysayers or any of the negativity. And I had spin but they all were just like, way to go. So I felt that good that I had that in my back pocket. I didn't need it, but it was worth it just for my confidence.
It's insurance, right? You always hope you don't need it. You want to have it.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. The other thing, the other thing I did want to mention too, because you asked about like whether we'd plan to sell, and we didn't, but at the same time, I will say we were very good about keeping our housekeeping in order. So nothing was discovered in due diligence. So I talked about when they came in and we pretended we had the tax audit, but we had all our employment records. We had all of our paperwork. Things can get lost in due diligence. So keep your house in order, people, so that due diligence goes smoothly and you don't lose anything. You don't want to leave anything on that table. I'm sure you've said that 1,000 times, Simon.
No, but that's why I do this podcast, because it's better that they hear it from you and not continue.
People walk away from deals, right? People walk away from deals in due diligence.
They do. And I'm going to paraphrase what you just said there, because to me, this is one of the golden rules of M&A, and that is no surprises.
Yes.
Right? No surprises. Yeah. And that means not only are you transparent with the buyers, but man, when you are getting ready, talk to your advisors. If you've got a little niggly thought in the back of your head about something, then you put it on the table and we talk. Yeah. Because no buyer expects a perfect business.
Right.
But if you haven't thought about something and have at least show them you've considered this particular issue and you have an answer for it, you're not going to look good.
Yeah, exactly. No, that's exactly right. And also my other advice would be, I realize once I'm talking about it, I have so much to say about it, but I think you also need to take care of your personal finances. Like our accountant a few years before we sold was like, okay, gals, you know what? You guys are at the 10-year mark or 11-year mark. Some of you might want changes in the next few years. So let's set up trust funds for the kids. Let's set up holding companies, because you want to, look, I'm in Canada. I pay a lot of taxes. I have no problem paying my taxes, all that jazz. But you want to do things that make financial sense, right? So you want to have places to put your money. If you have a big financial gain, you want to make sure you have a holding company and a trust fund set up, just so that you can, or whatever is available, have an accountant you love and you trust.
Yeah, 100%, right? It's managing your tax and protecting your assets. And if you haven't got a good accountant talking about those stuff, then you're doing yourself a disservice. So, yeah, no, it's brilliant. Julie, I could talk to you about this stuff all day. I love it. A million more questions I could ask you, but because I know that you're a very busy person. Yeah. Well, talk to me a little bit about what's happening today. I know you're still at the business. I think that's a testament to you, by the way. And I think any employees who are still there would go, you know what? They were right. They were here for the right reasons, and they, did the right journey. So I take my hat off to you for that. But what's the future look like? Are you thinking other businesses?
Yeah. So I've always got a few little things on the go on the side, but really what I'm doing is I do a lot of professional speaking and I do a lot of media stuff. I did, during COVID, the lockdown, a a lot of people were picking up side hustles. And I've had on my agenda to do a book for a long time. And I figured, okay, I'm not flying anywhere. I'm not speaking anywhere. I'm not at conferences. I'm grounded. So I thought, if I don't write the book now, when will I? So I wrote the book and became a bestseller, and it's all good. I've got one here. I'll hold it up.
Beautiful. That's cool.
And it's called Like a Mother, Birthing Businesses, Babies, and a Life Beyond Labels. And it's full of my life hacks, business hacks, parenting hacks. So if anyone wants to pick it up, obviously you can just go to my site, which is mabelslabels.com/Julie Cole. And all my stuff's there, Simon, my media, my blah, blah, all our socials, you name it.
Well, I'm going to put those links in the show notes so that people can go and check that out. I think that book sounds amazing. I think I've got so many other mumpreneurs that I know that are friends of mine who are going to be listening to this and probably want to reach out to you as well. So are you okay if people connect with you on LinkedIn and that sort of stuff?
100%. And you know what? Awesome. I actually have some cousin-in-laws, 2 sisters who are from Burraman, which is near Wayne-Greta. And they started a company years ago, not long after I started Mabel's Labels, it was also a mom business. And it was where they engrave kids' names on jewelry. And it's called, oh my gosh, they've done so well. Stacy and Lisa O'Keefe. And they are called, oh my gosh. The station, it's named after the station she lives on. Oh my gosh, she's going to kill me for not remembering. Oh, I suck. Anyway.
That's right. It'll come to you after we hang up and stop recording, of course. But please let them know. We'd love to have them on the show and talk about I love good homegrown Australian growth stories. I mean, they don't have to be Australian.
Coolaman.
Have a great
Coolaman. Yes, that's it. That's what the jewelry company is called. Okay, get that link and put it in your show notes. Yeah, they're amazing. They've done so well.
Cool. Well, listen, love to. We'd love to have a look at that. So, Julie, can I ask you one final question, if I could?
We'll allow it.
Given your experience, given everything that's happened, I mean, no doubt you're not the same person today that you were when you started Mabel's Labels, right? You can't be. But how do you define success now?
You know what? There's a Maya Angelou quote that kind of resonates with me, and it's success is defined by, what you do, how you do it, and how much you like it, or something like that. And really, that's me. I mean, at the end of the day, I don't take myself too seriously. This is we're here for a good time, not a long time. Leave the ego at the door. And as my grandma Lyons, I have this great old grandma. She died a few years ago at 101. And she believed in having a lot of self-confidence and also staying humble. And she'd say to me and Oliver, she's one of 21 Irish kids. She'd say to me, Julie, you're as good as the rest of them and better than none. And I remember it always.
I think that's brilliant.
Yeah.
Julie, thank you so much for coming on the show. Thanks for sharing your story with us. It's been great. I've been tapping away, writing lots of little notes here to share with everybody. So I think it's been brilliant. I've really enjoyed chatting to you. So thank you again.
I really appreciate you having me on. Thanks, Simon.
And thank you all for listening to another episode of the Buy, Grow, Sell podcast. I hope you enjoyed this episode as much as I did, and join us again next week for our next episode. Thanks for joining.